26th. It's certainly gray and foggy out there. I just totally misspelled your last name, Alan.
Okay, so where's the freaking clock on here? There's to be a clock on here. Okay, we're just gonna go in the sun.
I'm worried now that...
So we'll go by my watch, I guess. There used to be a clock on here. Yeah. Okay, so 1 minute to the 1 minute to the theme, okay?
Okay.
1 minute to the theme. Okay.
I can hear what you're saying.
That's weird.
What is wrong with this?
Why aren't you hearing me?
Well, I don't have a lineup out here, you know? And I don't know what's on the go with this.
Okay. Just get through the first item. Okay.
Okay, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Ella Burke. You're watching and listening to Kicker Radio on YouTube, radio produced by the journalism students at the College of the North Atlantic. For more great journalism, log on to kickercna.ca, and follow us on Twitter at CNA Journalism. Today is Thursday, September 26th, and it's a very gray, foggy one out there. We have an interesting show coming up for you, though. We'll hear about Newfoundland's very own Turtle Man, Muay Thai, and some great tunes. But first, we're going to find out a little bit more about bioethics from Kicker's Alan Bradbury.
Memorial University is launching its new Center for Bioethics next week. It will be the only one in Atlantic Canada. The director of the center, Dr. Daryl Pullman, thinks people should know that bioethics deals with more than just the common issues they might think about, like abortion or doctor-assisted death.
Really, the term bio means life, and ethics is about right and wrong and good and bad and so forth. So bioethics is really an area that looks at the life sciences in general and discusses various kinds of ethical issues that come up within the life sciences.
The Department of Bioethics is part of the School of Medicine, so right now there tends to be some focus on the health sciences. But Dr. Pullman would like to broaden that focus to take in the wider field of life sciences and beyond.
Given that we're here in the Faculty of Medicine, most of our attention is on the health sciences. And in the Center for Bioethics, we're trying to expand our focus to be beyond just the health sciences, but more generally to the life sciences. And also not just the life sciences, but those places where technology interfaces with the life sciences.
Dr. Chris Capozzi, an associate professor in the Department of Bioethics, says an example of the interaction between life sciences and technology is the mountains of data that the healthcare sector produces, and whether or not artificial intelligence should be allowed to access it.
So when people talk about AI and big data in healthcare, and one question I have is that if companies are going to make money off of my healthcare information, where's my cut? And where's my consent if it's happening already?
This is just one of the issues that could be examined further through the Center for Bioethics. Some other examples are the genetic manipulation of babies and mandatory organ donation. The center launches next Thursday with a keynote speaker and reception at the Health Sciences Center. For Kicker News in St. John's, I'm Alan Bradbury.
Did you know that there's a turtle retirement home here in St. John's? Neither did we. Kicker's Jasmine's Burke dropped into there to have a chat with the man who created it all.
All right, I'm here with Dennis Oliver. He is the owner of Turtle Rest Retirement Villa. And thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks. So I'll just jump right into it. So I'm sitting here right now, and I have a couple turtles beside me and one
Right.
leopard gecko.
Right?
So tell me about your passion for these animals.
Absolutely unique creatures. There's no creature on the planet like them at all. Each shell is very different. There are no two turtle shells that are identical. Much like fingerprint. And they're entirely underappreciated. They get a very bad reputation for being high maintenance, for having, what's the words I'm looking for here? A high production of weight. And that usually tends to serve them poorly. Ends in poor circumstances, like Raffaella. There, she ends up getting dumped into a pond, or some end up in a river, some end up just mysteriously vanishing, and that's that, So, basically, just so unique. No creature like it in the world, so yeah, absolutely caught my attention. In 2013, it started off as I just wanted my turtles. Okay, I would have been happy with one, ended up getting two. Didn't take the ad after TV Swift enough, ended up with 5, 17. So it was time to consider turning this into more than just, a private hobby.
Yeah.
See if we can get it funded, see if we can, we considered charity, but we ended up staying as a non-profit incorporated.
Yeah. So what's your favorite story from these animals? Like, they all have their own specific story.
A favorite story would have to be Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim fell out of his aquarium way back when, well before we were incorporated. Fell out of his tank, landed on the bottom of his shell right on the skirt there, kind of cracked it off a little bit, so we mended him up and he healed fairly nicely. But he tends to be an aggressive mater. So we take him out of the pond regularly and lay him up on the floor and just let him cool off for a week, 2 weeks. I was out here one day and I was hearing him flapping around somewhere in the house, but couldn't really pinpoint where he was. So I called out to him. I said, "Where's Dad's handsome boy? Come on, old handsome." And I just left it at that. Well, it didn't take 5 minutes, and there he is coming up the hallway, came right to the kitchen sink where I was stood up, and sat on my foot. These creatures have personalities. They know your voice, they know your footfalls, they can tell when you're coming to feed them. And according to Tiny Tim, they know their name. So that's like absolutely fantastic.
Awesome. How many animals do you have here?
We're sticking the number 53, and that's including the 2 that are actually coming today.
So do you consider yourself a father to these animals?
They are my babies.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I'm more than happy to put them out for adoption. But that comes with requirements.
So, if you do feel like these are all your children, this might be a very hard question, but do you have a favorite?
Oh, Big Mama has to be. She has to be. She is what I consider the matriarch. She was our very first turtle. Her and Handsome Bob came in a pair, but where she's larger and all, we'll give her the first place category there.
Okay.
She's also an exotic species versus what you normally get in a pet store, which is the common red-eared slider. She's a yellow-bellied slider. She has no red marking on her head whatsoever. She's all black and yellow. And absolutely personable. What a beautiful turtle. You can pick her up, you can pet her under the chin. She doesn't struggle. She's not skittish at all. We actually had her at the Newfoundland Pet Expo and did photos with children for $2 a piece.
Wow.
What a pleasant turtle. She has to be definitely our favorite.
Sweet. So tell me about the setup here.
Set up downstairs right now, we have a 9 foot by 9 foot by 4 foot deep pond. Currently it's only at 3.5 feet deep because there's a leak in the set liner. This was hand built, conceived of by yours truly with the help of Justin James. He's our star volunteer. and of course, funded entirely by Penny Constantine, my lovely wife. Without her support, none of this would be possible. She pays for it all, and the company remunerates her as the company is able to do so. So that's the setup.
Like this cost.
Monthly to run this, when you take what it's going to add on to your heat and light, when it takes, you add on what you're going to have to feed them, depends on a bunch of different factors. It depends on what you're feeding them, and it depends on how hot you keep your pond, and it depends on, if you're using hot water to do refills and changes, and you're looking somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2,000 a month.
Holy smokes.
Yes, yeah.
You really love those turtles,
Oh,
don't you?
yes. Well, I'm glad they love me back.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, thank you so much, Dennis.
You're
I
more than
really
welcome.
appreciate you talking to me.
Anytime.
And that was Jasmine Burt. Next, we'll hear from Dalton, Albert Dalton, and his song Millionaire.
I'm tired of being broke, it sucks, but that's dumb luck. Cause I could be rich if I wasn't ticked about dumb stuff, and that's just messing ironic that I could be way beyond it. If I didn't stress about what's in my bank account, I gotta stay up on it, cause I got bills to pay, and the money's tight to say. That's why when I ask for more hours, I get more shots. Pity that I never change. We don't got enough, this place is messed. One wrong turn and we're bankrupt. They say it's they call from the islands. Brother, that's messed up. They got money for them, but no money for us. Buildings go up, but the jobs ain't enough. Holding us down and we'll never get up. That's why for my city, I gotta make bucks just to prove you can do what you wanna do. You're working for only you. With my pride and my money, that's so hard to find. You either selling your soul or can't spare it down. That should get into school, but that'll take some time. You better start asking it for overtime. Don't speak your mind, cause if you speak your mind, they'll replace you but up the assembly line. It's complicated, but I need to get paid and I'm down to shovel-ish. If there's 50 bricks, what on this paycheck ain't paid yet, I'm still broke. I ain't heard that from my kinfolk. From this music thing, I might get paid. I turn it down and my phone rang. Man, Mess don't have on a song that's made by me. Unless you have your hand in the vision, then you can't buy me. But a wise man said, man, let me tell you, put your stuff on the market, make $1 million too. I don't understand what you do, why don't you do like the millionaires do? You want a fancy car, need expensive shoes, why don't you do like the millionaires do? Now I'm messed up, don't got a job, got like $10 on my debit card, got like $5 in cash maybe, but I spent that on the music lately. Seems like that won't never work. My mama up and name up in the history book, say if you don't succeed, you should try and try. How many times it gon' try for this ink gon' dry? Maybe $1 billion or $1 trillion. Put 100 tracks, you only heard a song. When I drop the next, still ahead of the game. I say about an EP with the head of you lanes. Features to the classic verses. Own shit, something that you never heard of. Tree fall in the woods doesn't make a sound, and if a rapper don't sell, so the greatest around me. That just don't make no sense, but that's also why I gotta make sure the homies sell with. You know, we about to blow off a crazy wit, and that's crazy-ish, but for right now, still broke as hell. Now I'm sick of people saying that they wish you well, cause I got my own ish, I got a lot of stress, I done bugged out. Now at my best, if you hit me up and I don't respond, just know I got a lot of it going on, and it won't be long till the phone's cut off. So say your piece before the beeping stops. Gotta say my piece for the reaper starts. When he comes for me, he can't take my heart. Every time when I spit it, when I'm up on stage, I throw my whole heart, and it gets safe to say I'm a heartless zombie. I'ma keep going hard till I'm rich. No, I got to up and win, even if that means a couple cents. Cause I'ma be on my grind every chance I get. Cause music means more than the life I live. And the wise man said, man, let me tell you, put your stuff on the market, make $1 million too. I don't understand what you do, why don't you do like the millionaires do? You want a fancy car, need expensive shoes, why don't you do like the millionaires do?
That was Albert Dalton and Millionaire. He's one of Newfoundland's very own up-and-coming artists. The 21-year-old has his own spin on the music industry. Dalton was a former CNA student and a few of his songs have been played here before. I'm Ella Burke, and you're listening and watching Kicker Radio on YouTube. Radio produced by the journalism students at the College of the North Atlantic. For more great journalism, log on to kickercna.ca and follow us on Twitter at CNA Journalism. Coming up, according to the Harris Center, Newfoundland's population is going to decrease drastically by 2043. But for now, let's talk about Muay Thai. At 8 Limb Muay Thai, you'll find aspiring students learning that the Thai martial art. However, there's a battle brewing behind the scenes. Kicker's Ken Meeker talks about Muay Thai Lyles here in Newfoundland.
That would be a knee to the face.
This is what greets you as you enter 8 Limb Muay Thai on Sundays. Sparring in the center of the ring. The bangs and thuds of punching bags as they get walloped. James Rashard gazes on from his desk, offering advice to the combatants. There is just one issue for the students. Boxing and kickboxing competitions are legal here in this province. Muay Thai competitions are illegal. Something Rashard is fighting to change.
Every couple of years, we'll have athletes here at 8 Limb that will compete, and they'll go to nationals in Toronto or Calgary, and they'll have it very successful at their level, but we'll come back with umpteenth amount of gold medals, and I lose them because there's nothing next for them. It means they have to wait a whole nother year pretty much to go to nationals again because they can't compete locally.
Newfoundlander Gavin Tucker fights professionally in the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He's been to Thailand a fistful of times to hone his Muay Thai skills. He sees economic opportunity in legalizing competition here.
I think if you did legalize Muay Thai, you'd get a lot of people from all over the country traveling to Newfoundland to fight pro Muay Thai.
A point reiterated by Rashard.
I'm pretty sure that we all have this thing still called taxes out there, and I'm pretty sure that the event would be taxed. So there'd be tax money coming in as well, and there'd be products and services sold there at the venue, which would be taxed as well. And then we'd be bringing people in from other provinces or countries, which we could call a form of tourism. Geez, it seems like we'd be hitting all of those key words and key contributing factors, but the line ride continues.
For Rashard, the fight continues. For Kicker, this is Ken Meeker.
Later, we'll hear an interview with Peter Halle. But before that, we're going to hear about an issue that's getting bigger as the province gets smaller. Declining population is a problem for Newfoundlanders. A recent study suggests people just aren't having many children or are simply leaving the province. Kicker Steve Tupper tells us more.
According to the Harris Center, Newfoundland is supposed to lose about 90,000 people by 2043. There are many reasons for this. One is people aren't having enough babies. Eileen Redigan from Collier is a typical case. She grew up in a family of 10 people, but she only had 2 kids herself.
Oh, a lot different, yeah. Just having 2 children and being in a family of sometimes 10, sometimes 12 people in the house.
People also don't want to stay in Newfoundland anymore. Many people are finding opportunities elsewhere. Grace Tetizian helps entrepreneurs in the graduate program at Memorial University of Newfoundland. She teaches people how to start their business and how to thrive in the province.
Because why would you learn the fundamentals, learn all of the resources that are out there, find all these things that can help you, and then leave?
Tetizian runs a program called the Entrepreneurship Training Program for any student doing graduate studies.
So this is a program for students who are interested in starting their own business.
This is only one of the solutions. The Harris Center also reports a way the province can solve work replacement is by immigrating people to the province. For Kicker, this is Steve Tabor.
Now for some more music. With his debut album in the works, 23-year-old pop rock singer Peter Fewer shows off his talents in his track, My Worst Day. Yeah. I don't really have an intro, so I'm just saying, but right now we're going to hear about one of Newfoundland's most talented artists.
So captivated by the smell
won't you come a little closer, baby? You know how I feel, don't you feel the same? Yeah. Now come inside with me, we know there's no time to waste. I'll give you my all. Even on my worst day. Hey, yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah. Before the candles burn out, won't you get undressed? Yeah, yeah. The subtlety of silhouettes makes every word flirt from my head. I've held my tongue from conversation for way too long. But that's okay, who needs words anyway? Tonight your body's all I want. When my heart wears thin, won't you come a little closer, baby? You know how I feel, don't you feel the same? Yeah. Now come inside with me, we know there's no time to waste. I'll give you my all. Oh, oh. Even on my worst day, I've been holding on for so long. And I'd be damned if it all turns out wrong. On my worst day, on my worst day, on my worst day. On my worst day, on my worst day, yeah. Even on my worst day.
This song and many others are the main reason he has such a loyal following in his hometown of St. John's. I'm Ella Burke, and you're watching and listening to Kicker Radio on YouTube, radio produced by the journalism students at the College of the North Atlantic. Have you been trying to adopt a rescue dog from one of the many shelters here in St. John's? If so, then you likely already know that you're not the only one. I'll talk about this happy problem in a little bit, but first, we're going to hear about one of Newfoundland's talented artists, Peter Halle.
Peter Halle is the musical director and an actor with the Spirit of Newfoundland Productions, a well-known theater company in St. John's. I sat down with Peter to learn a bit about his journey from a shy kid to a renowned actor and playwright. When did you realize that you first had a knack for things like music and theater?
I think as a young kid growing up, when I grew up, boys didn't sing in the theater. But I loved our stereo and my older brothers and sisters' music, and I would listen to the Beatles. And so I wasn't introduced to musical theater until I went to a production at Holy Heart. When I was a kid, they took the school, and there was a production of Oliver. And the Fagin character was my next door neighbor who was like 5 years older than me, and I didn't know he acted or sang or anything, and I went, is that him? And it was the first time I remember being hooked, and I went, if he can do it, I can do it. And I've since played that role like 3 times. I love that role. And then I got a sort of new circle of friends when I was young as well, in my late teens. And they were like piano playing, singing people, and I was just always thinking, I would love to be able to do that, but I was intensely shy. But I was always lurking in the background thinking, one day I will. But secretly, I could imitate my sister playing like Freddy's, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. She'd fool it up, and I would go to the piano, and I would be able to play it. And I was thinking, my mother should recognize something here. Like someone noticed that he's good, like he'd be good for lessons. I was too shy to ask, but it never happened. But I still kept playing and wouldn't sing because I was afraid of singing. Then I went on my own as a 21-year-old, and I said, I'm going to take piano lessons. So I went to this guy, took piano, and I told him what I could do, and I showed him, and he said, well, you're well on your way, and he showed me, I said, I want to play Moon River, and I want to play Memories Like the Corners of My Mind. Those are the two on my hit list. I don't know why those songs, but anyway. So the first lesson I left playing those, and this piano teacher plays lots of instruments, and I played the chords, he played the tune on flute and saxophone. And I went home and listened to that and let 100 people listen to it and say, this is me. I was shocked by what could happen.
How did Spirit of Newfoundland get started?
So during music school, I'm playing a duo. So I played piano and sang, and then this girl, Gwen Carroll, and I sang together. It was really exciting. We both went up, and when Phantom of the Opera started in Toronto, they had auditions. We both went up to audition. I got my 25 seconds, and they said, thank you. And Gwen went in, and she got a minute, and then another minute, and she was called back the next day, and she was down to 3 for the lead. And they hired the first 2 girls, but they had her there for days.
Okay.
But we capitalized on that. We wrote a little Phantom of the Opera show, and we toured it around the island because we love that music. One of these performances, Kathy Hicks was in the audience, and she's my business partner now. And so this was at the Stonehouse, and she left a note with the waiter and said, how do we hear more of you guys? I'm a CBC journalist. So I called her, and then we got together for tea or coffee, and through a discussion, she said, what would you like to do? And I said, I'm a school teacher, but I'd love to say that my full-time job was going to a show or going to the theater, or that's what I'd like to do. And she said, I would like that too. I'd like to stop my job as a journalist because I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we both started Spirit of Newfoundland. It started that summer, in the summer of 1997, with Hard Tickets and High Society. We were going to do one summer show, and it went so well that we wrote a sequel, Hard Tickets and High Society at Christmas.
How did you actually come into possession of the Masonic Temple?
So we rented this place from the Masons. We rented their room, and they thought it was great because, they weren't getting a lot of gigs here, and here we were regular and we became more popular. Christmas time in those days, like in 1997, 1998, we were doing 5 shows a week at Christmas, which was mammoth for them. But they'd get a full bar, and we were doing the food. So we brought in our own. They had a tiny little kitchen. We did our own catering. They took the bar, so they'd make revenue on the bar. And they were like, tell us what else you need. Do you want a dressing room? That sort of thing. And then there was discussion about them selling the building. And we thought, maybe we should buy this building. And so they put it up for sale. We put a bid that we thought was reasonable. And we were actually at this little restaurant next door, which is number 4 now. It was a Casbah. We were toasting ourselves, waiting to hear back from our real estate agent, saying, we just bought the Masonic Temple, when the phone rang and said, you didn't get the Masonic Temple. 2 people from Vancouver got it. They're Air Canada people, ground crew, and they bought the temple. And price-wise, what they paid for it was so minimal. They bought a temple in St. John's for such a reasonable price compared to a studio apartment in Vancouver. They thought they had hit the jackpot. They were going to make a boutique hotel. They were going to come in and do a restaurant.
Am I close?
But because of its provincial historic and national historic status, they were met with opposition by every, city and government, red tape. So we went back to the Majestic Theatre, and we thought, wouldn't it be nice to have our own home? So we called the people in Vancouver. And we said, can we rent it for you from you? And they said, sure. So being, Air Canada people, they just flew down and saw one of our shows. And after the show, they said, you know what, you guys deserve to have this place. This seems like yours. So they were very kind. And through, a deal, we assumed their mortgage and took care of some of the repairs that had happened when it was theirs, like a $30,000 roof leakage and torch-on roof needed to be done. And it became our home. That was 13 years ago.
Over these, you guys have been going for how long now?
22 years.
Over these 22 years, you guys have done a lot of shows. What would you say are some of the favorites that you've done over that period of time?
So all of our shows at the beginning, we just happened upon this, we would find interesting local stories, like Georgina Sterling and the laying of the cornerstone at Cabot Tower, and we'd look up the history and we'd write that history into our show. So these were real things. Wedding at Octagon Castle was about a man, Charles Daniel, who came from the States and built an Octagon Castle at Octagon Pond. And he was just bizarre. To this day, there's never been a larger funeral procession in Newfoundland than his. He was a costumier and just a really interesting study. So it taught us at the beginning that we have to take really interesting Newfoundland factual stuff and build it into our show, and always have a Newfoundland element. So that's our mandate. Spirit of Newfoundland always celebrates. We would never perpetuate a negative stereotype of any Newfoundlander, like a goofy, newfie, and dumb, like the way Newfoundlanders speak. I think of it as brilliant, as opposed to, like, that is not intelligent. The turn of phrase is just so smart, and it's clever, and if it's delivered the right way, is just elevates the Newfoundlander, as opposed to perpetuate anything negative.
Thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate your time.
Oh, it's excellent. Thank you, Nick. My pleasure.
That was Kickers Nick Travis interviewing Peter Halle. Coming up soon, we'll get the real reason why another Newfoundland artist, Andy Jones, left the Cod Co. But before that, you're going to hear from me talk about the lack of adoptable rescue dogs here in St. John's. Dogs and puppies that get surrendered to shelters get adopted again almost immediately. At the Animal Care Adoption Center on Higgins Line, there are a lot of cats available to bring home, but no dogs. Cindy McGrath has been working there for 11 years and is now the manager. She says that there has been a drastic change in the number of dogs that they see.
We traditionally had, I would say, anywhere from 8 to 12 dogs on a regular basis. Now we could have, sometimes we have no dogs. We've had no dogs for several weeks.
There are still some rescue dogs ready to be adopted through places such as the SPCA. But for the most part, they're all on the west coast of Newfoundland and in Labrador.
Paul? Thank you.
Rebecca Oxford is a nursing student who used to volunteer at the SPCA in St. John's. While she was there, a dog who paid no attention to people got hers. His name is Sammy.
And I noticed he was the only dog that wasn't excited to see a person.
While Oxford was working with the SPCA, she said it seemed like dogs would come in waves. Either the kennels were completely full or totally empty, but they never stayed long.
Which is a good thing, but people are eager to adopt them, and then other people go without them for a little while.
Sometimes people end up purchasing a dog from a pet store or breeder because they've been waiting for a rescue for so long. Both McGrath and Oxford encourage people to wait for a rescue and keep checking adoption sites regularly. But for those who don't want to wait any longer, there is the option of flying a dog in from somewhere else, such as Labrador. Oftentimes, this is only at a small extra cost, and saving a life is worth it. But maybe in the meantime, you could adopt a kitten or two. They also need good homes. For Kicker, I'm Ella Burke. We have one last song for you before we end our show today. Lexy Hinks and her song Bibles. Hinks has been a part of our show last year with some live music, so we'll listen to her song now.
We were so
Jonathan's suggestion.
Settled down because we
I said maybe.
We built
I said maybe.
Why did we end up alone? It's not all. Our hearts lost warmth. Swear to me on a stack of Bibles 10 feet tall. You don't love me at all. I don't love you at all. Heard you lost your charm. That you had my name removed. Nothing's changed, and I'm so glad it did.
2 minutes.
It's not our fault. Our hearts lost warmth. Swear to me on a stack of Bibles 10 feet tall. You don't love me at all. I don't love you at all. Thought the world was strong, 'cause you've been together so very long. Maybe I was wrong. It's not our fault. Our hearts lost warmth. Swear to me on a stack of Bibles 10 feet tall. You don't love me at all. I don't love you at all. I don't love you at all.
That was Lexy Hinks and her new EP, Bibles. I'm Ella Burke, and you're watching and listening to Kicker Radio on YouTube. Radio produced by the journalism students at the College of the North Atlantic. We're coming to the end of our show today, but for more great journalism, log on to kickercna.ca or follow us on Twitter at CNA Journalism. But before we go, we're going to hear one last story about the province's funniest men. During the 80s and early 90s, Andy Jones was a fixture on the CBC comedy show Codco. But sometime in the early 90s, Jones abruptly quit the show. So why did he walk away? Kicker's Ken Meeker got the lowdown from the man himself.
St. John's comedian Andy Jones has had quite the career. He has performed with the Newfoundland Traveling Theatre Company. Afterwards, he joined the legendary comedy troupe Codco. Jones has written 6 children's books based on Newfoundland folktales. Jones won the Winterset Award in March 2013 for his book Jack and Mary in the Land of Thieves. Recently, he's had roles in comedies Republic of Doyle and Little Dog. On Sunday, September 22nd, Jones will take to the stage at the Holy Heart Theatre in a show called More Than Half of Codco, sharing the stage with Greg Malone and Kathy Jones. I caught up with Andy Jones for a chat. Thank you for joining me. Andy, to get started, tell me about what happened back in the 90s that made you leave Codco.
Well, that's a long time ago. I really had difficulties with them because they would refuse to put on a sketch that we wrote about. It was a thing about priests in Dublin and sort of the sexual proclivities of priests in Ireland, and it really was it wasn't directly connected to anything that was going on in Newfoundland, except that it was significant because at that time, of course, the Mount Cashel inquiry was going on, and I felt like they should have put this piece on. And it was quite bold and saucy. And actually, they eventually did put it on. So we had a disagreement. They would, and I said, well, I won't. I will quit if you don't put it on. And they called my bluff, and I ended up quitting.
So what exactly was the skit?
The skit, you can get it online if you want to get it. It's called Pleasant Irish Priests in Conversation.
So I guess this was the CBC that was publishing at the time. Was it for Codco?
It was CBC, yes. It was not the production company in Halifax. They were all 100% behind me. They wanted it to go on the air, but it was CBC Toronto and again, not CBC Halifax. It was CBC Toronto that didn't want to put it on because they had the final say.
So what was so risque about it?
So it's about it's about priests. So how to explain that sketch is such a it's a pretty shocking piece in some ways. It's about priests talking about using priest holes in Dublin, where they stick their dick through and they get sexual satisfaction, and about the different kinds of buttocks that they might be inserting their penis into. That's what it's about.
But at the time, it must have been a pretty tough decision. But has regret ever occurred?
Oh yes, absolutely. I absolutely regret it. It was a very bad move for me in many ways. And I don't think it did much good to anybody, and except it hurt everybody. It made everybody, it hurt everybody in Codco because I split the company, and although the company carried on without me, but and it caused great financial difficulty with us, and it deflected me from my what was a fun part of my career, which was doing sketch comedy, which is my favorite thing to do. So I do regret it a lot. I think I had mostly regrets.
Do you think that artists nowadays are as solid in their integrity and beliefs?
I guess so. Depending on the circumstances. I mean, that was particularly touche for Newfoundlanders, of course, because we were. But first of all, we went through the Catholic school system ourselves, and we were quite bitter and angry about how we were treated there, and the hypocrisy of the church was so stupendous. And then this was happening right during Mount Cashel, when people were finally talking about it. So they were particularly crucial things for us. So I guess someone would have to be in a situation where they felt that way.
Okay, so that was just about all I had for you, but was there anything else you'd like to say or anything you'd like to add?
No, not really. That sounds good if you want to go with that angle. It's interesting for sure. But I'll talk to you any other time you want to, Ken. Thank you very much for doing this.
I realize you're busy, and I appreciate your time very much. Thank you.
No problem. Take care of yourself. Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers, Andy.
And that brings us to the end of our show today. But remember, for more great journalism, log on to kickercna.ca and follow us on Twitter at CNA Journalism. I'm Ella Burke.